At a crowded airport, a 39-year-old black mechanic is about to board the most important flight of his life. Everything is going according to plan, until he misses the flight when stopping to help an elderly woman struggling with her luggage. He lost his shot at a dream job interview, but he has no regrets. What he doesn't know is that the woman he helped is the CEO of a major airline, and what happens next will be the reward for his kindness. Before we dive in this story, do you remember the first job you ever had? Let's comment below. The rain came down in a light mist over the New Orleans tarmac, turning the pavement into a slick mosaic of city lights and headlights. Inside the Louis Armstrong International Airport, Marcus Jefferson adjusted the strap of his worn duffel bag as he hustled through Terminal B, his work boots squeaking with every determined step. Marcus didn't believe in luck anymore. He believed in momentum, in movement, in making it count. And today, every second mattered. He checked the overhead sign, Charlotte, Flight 389, final boarding in 24 minutes. 39 years old, one son, one ailing mother, and one shot at the kind of job that could shift the course of everything. A lead technician position at Carolina Motors. Not glamorous, but steady. Not flashy, but life-changing. Paid time off, full health coverage, and for once, the dignity of saying no to second shifts and yes to his kid's school field trip. He rounded the corner toward the security checkpoint, his eyes narrowing in on the shorter line near the left wall, calculating every possible edge. That's when he saw her. A woman, elderly, alone, standing just outside the stanchions, surrounded by 3 mismatched suitcases. Her coat was a shade of blue that might have once been vibrant, now dulled by age and wear. The lining peeked out from the sleeves, frayed but clean. Her silver hair was pulled back in a low bun, slightly undone by the wind, and her hands trembled ever so slightly as she tried, unsuccessfully, to hoist the largest of the bags onto the conveyor belt. Passengers streamed past her without so much as a glance. Business travelers locked into their Bluetooth calls. A family dragging a sugar-hyped toddler. A TSA agent barking about empty pockets and laptop trays. No one stopped. Marcus slowed, his left hand clenched around the strap of his duffel, and he stole a glance at the clock on the wall. 22 minutes. He could make it if he cut the line just right, if no one ahead of him set off the metal detector, if he sprinted to gate C-18 like his life depended on it. But something in the woman's face halted him. Not the age or the struggle, but the unmistakable mix of resolve and quiet shame, the same expression he'd seen on his mother's face the day they were told the mortgage company wouldn't wait another month. Pride eroding under necessity. "Ma'am," he said, stepping out of the stream of foot traffic, voice calm but firm. "Can I give you a hand with those?" The woman turned to him, surprised, her eyes piercing blue beneath a weather-worn brow. There was something sharp in them, not unkind but discerning, like she was used to being looked through rather than seen. "Well," she replied with a polite but uncertain smile, "I suppose I wouldn't say no to a bit of help. These bags seem to have grown heavier in the last 10 minutes. Marcus offered a small laugh as he reached down and lifted the first suitcase with practiced ease, noting the vintage leather, the brass corner guards. "Traveling somewhere special?" he asked, trying to keep the mood light as he set it on the belt. "Just business," she said vaguely, glancing down at her feet. "Though I find at my age it all starts to feel the same." She moved through the scanners slowly, wincing slightly as she raised her arms. Marcus waited on the other side, gathering her belongings, brushing off an impatient glance from a security officer. "I'm headed to gate 49A, she said, peering at a crumpled boarding pass. Marcus felt a drop in his stomach. Gate 49A was at the far end of the terminal, 2 concourses over and past a connector tunnel. He could still make his own flight if he left now. He'd have to jog, maybe skip the restroom stop, definitely no time for water, but he'd make it. Or he could help her get to her gate, make sure she boarded safely, and kiss his shot at Carolina Motors goodbye. He looked at her again. She was struggling to restrap her purse, her lips slightly parted as if catching her breath, and heard his mother's voice in his head, the one she used when telling stories of his father. "Son, your daddy never walked past someone hurting, not once, even when it cost him." Marcus took a breath, adjusted his duffel bag again. 49A, huh? He said. That's a bit of a hike. I'll walk you there. Oh no, I couldn't ask you to. You didn't, he said, smiling. Besides, my mama raised me right. The woman smiled then, a soft curve of gratitude more powerful than a thank you. My name's Evelyn, she offered, extending a hand that felt delicate but firm. Marcus, he replied, shaking it. Let's get you to that gate. As they moved through the terminal, Evelyn's steps were deliberate, and Marcus found himself adjusting his pace to match. She apologized once for being slow, and he waved it off. It's not the speed that matters, he said, just the direction. By the time they reached the halfway point, she confessed she was feeling lightheaded. Didn't eat this morning, she murmured. Foolish, I know. Without hesitation, Marcus steered her toward a nearby kiosk. You sit, he said, lowering her gently onto a padded bench. I'll be right back. He returned minutes later with hot tea, a granola bar, and a blueberry muffin. They looked fresh, he said with a shrug, placing them into her hands. She studied him as he sat beside her. What brings you to the airport today? Job interview, Marcus replied, trying to sound casual. Biggest one I've had in a decade. Her eyes flicked toward the screen overhead. Final boarding, flight 389 to Charlotte. That's yours, isn't it? She asked quietly. Marcus didn't answer at first. Then he sighed. Yeah, was. She looked stricken. You missed it. Because of me. Marcus shook his head. You needed help. That was the right call. But your job. Jobs come and go, he said, though the weight of that statement nearly cracked his voice. What we choose to do, that's what sticks. She didn't reply, but her eyes lingered on his for a long moment. Not appraising, not pitying, just seeing. Marcus stood, gathered her bags once more. Let's get you to that gate, Miss Evelyn. You've got a flight to catch. As they resumed their slow walk through the terminal, Marcus felt a strange peace settle in his chest. Quiet, unexpected. He had missed his flight. But something told him this journey wasn't over. Not yet. By the time they reached Gate 49A, the announcement overhead was calling for pre-boarding, and Marcus could already see the gate agents in navy blue polos scanning passes with mechanical rhythm. Evelyn looked relieved, her spine straightening slightly as she saw the boarding sign, though Marcus could tell her energy was running low. He guided her to a seat near the windows, where the light from the late morning sun cast warm stripes across the floor, and carefully placed her carry-on at her feet. You made it, he said, giving her a gentle smile, though the clock in his own head ticked a reminder that his flight had long since departed. Evelyn adjusted her coat, brushing invisible lint from her lap, then turned to him with something like concern. Are you sure you'll be all right, Marcus? Her voice was quiet but steady, like someone used to asking the question, and not always getting a straight answer. He nodded, though his shoulders sank slightly as he looked past the terminal windows, where the distant silhouette of a plane lifted into the sky. I'll figure it out, he said, half to her, half to himself. I've missed flights before. Life keeps moving. He didn't mention that his phone was down to 2%, that he'd spent the last of his money on her muffin and tea, or that the idea of sleeping overnight in an airport gate chair was starting to feel less like a backup plan and more like a certainty. Evelyn didn't push. Instead, she reached into her bag, fingers nimble despite their age, and pulled out a slim notepad with a monogrammed cover. She tore a page from the back, wrote something quickly, folded it, then placed it in Marcus's palm. You'll need this later, she said, her tone mysterious but not unkind. He looked down at the folded paper, then back at her. What is it? A thank you? She replied simply. In case I don't see you again. Marcus tucked it into his wallet without looking, unsure what to say. Thank you for walking with me, she added, her blue eyes sharper than ever. Most people don't walk at all anymore, they just rush. It's rare to find someone who chooses to slow down. He gave a lopsided smile. Slowing down wasn't part of the plan today, but I guess neither was meeting you. Evelyn laughed, a low, surprisingly vibrant sound that reminded him of his Aunt Ruby's kitchen table, warm, unexpected. The boarding call grew louder, and Evelyn stood, steadying herself with one hand on the chair. Marcus instinctively reached to help, but she waved him off gently. I've got it. She stepped into line, her gait slower than most, but purposeful. He watched her hand her boarding pass to the gate agent, who scanned it without a glance, focused more on her phone than the passenger in front of her. Marcus noticed the flash of first class on the digital readout, and something about it caught his attention. He hadn't expected Evelyn to be flying first class, not with her travel-worn clothes and understated demeanor. Still he said nothing, just watched her until she disappeared into the jet bridge. With her gone, silence crept into Marcus's awareness like a slow fog. The adrenaline from earlier had faded, leaving behind the hollowness of uncertainty. He glanced at his phone, 1% battery, no outlet in sight. His duffel bag felt heavier now, as though the interview, the lost opportunity, and the weight of unspoken worries had all crawled inside. He wandered back through the terminal, passing vending machines, gate change monitors, a children's play area with peeling decals. He found an empty bench near baggage claim, dropped his bag and sat down slowly, stretching his legs. For a long while he just sat there, watching people come and go. Families reuniting, drivers holding signs, luggage tumbling from carousels like forgotten promises. Eventually he leaned back against the cool wall, tilted his head and closed his eyes. Just for a minute, he told himself. Just long enough to rest, to breathe, to not think about what he had lost. But sleep came quickly, deeper than he expected, and when he woke again, the sky beyond the windows had shifted from bright blue to dusky lavender. The terminal had quieted, the chatter of morning travelers replaced by the more subdued rhythm of evening flights. He checked his phone again. Dead. His stomach growled, but he had no money left. He reached into his pocket for the note Evelyn had given him earlier, the one he hadn't read. He unfolded it with tired fingers. In looping script it read, "Stay right here, I'll find you." No name, no explanation, just those 6 words. He blinked, confused, then folded the paper again and returned it to his wallet. Maybe she meant it metaphorically. Maybe it was just a kindness meant to soften a hard moment. He wasn't sure. But something in her tone, in her eyes when she'd handed it to him, had carried more weight than simple politeness. 30 minutes passed, then 45. Marcus had begun to consider finding a quiet corner behind the baggage carousel to sleep for the night when the automatic doors whooshed open, letting in a gust of cooler air and the sound of a car idling outside. A sleek black sedan pulled up beneath the arrival canopy. The driver, in a sharp charcoal gray uniform, stepped out and opened the back door with precise, practiced motion. At first, Marcus didn't notice. He was staring at the floor, tracing imaginary lines in the tile with his boot. But then he heard the voice, measured, unmistakable. "Mr. Jefferson," the driver said, holding the door wide. "More is ready for you." Marcus looked up, frowning, not sure he'd heard correctly. "Excuse me?" The driver gestured toward the car. "Miss Evelyn Moore. She's asked me to escort you. Your bags, sir?" Marcus blinked hard, scanning the sidewalk, and then he saw her, stepping out of the back seat of the sedan, no longer wrapped in that worn wool coat, but now wearing a tailored blazer over a silk blouse, her hair neatly pinned, her presence somehow taller than before. The same Evelyn, but different. She smiled at him, her eyes twinkling beneath the golden lights of the terminal. "I told you I'd find you." Marcus stood slowly, stunned. I thought you were on that flight. To Atlanta." "I was," she said simply, "but I had a stop to make first." She nodded toward the car. "Come with me, Marcus. I think you've earned a second chance." He hesitated. "Where are we going?" "Charlotte," she said. "Tonight." "But how?" he stammered. "My plane," she answered, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Come along now, we have much to discuss." Still reeling, Marcus picked up his duffel and followed her through the sliding doors, the strange sense that his entire world had just shifted beneath his feet without making a sound. The black sedan glided through a private service entrance of the airport, bypassing the chaos of commercial terminals and weaving through a quiet road lined with hangars and low-lit access gates. Marcus sat in the back seat, his duffel beside him, his hands resting awkwardly on his knees. The cabin smelled faintly of cedar and leather, and the silence between him and Evelyn was oddly companionable. She didn't speak much as they drove, just watched the road with a faint smile playing at the corner of her lips, as if she already knew something he hadn't yet realized. Marcus shifted in his seat, still wearing the same button-up shirt he'd ironed that morning, now wrinkled and clinging to his back. He couldn't help but feel out of place, like a mechanic dropped into the wrong movie. "Ms. Moore," he said cautiously, breaking the silence. "What exactly is going on?" Evelyn turned to him then, her blue eyes sharp beneath the ambient lighting of the car. "You helped a woman when no one else would," she said simply. "Now she's returning the favor. That's all." "But why me?" he asked, genuinely baffled. "You don't even know me." To that, Evelyn gave a small laugh, warm and almost maternal. "Oh, I know more than you think," she replied. "I know you stayed when you didn't have to. I know you missed something important to make sure a stranger didn't fall through the cracks. I know you treated every moment with dignity, even when you thought no one was watching." She tilted her head. "And I was watching, Marcus. That's rather the point." The car turned toward a wide gate guarded by a uniformed agent who raised it without question. Ahead, bathed in pale runway lights, sat a white jet with a soft gold emblem on its tail. A rising sun cradled by wings. The logo of Aurora Air. Marcus's eyebrows lifted in disbelief. The jet's stairs were already extended, its cabin lights on, the kind of plane he'd only seen in movies. "Wait," he said slowly. "This is your plane?" Evelyn nodded, stepping out as the driver opened her door. "It is." Marcus opened his door himself, not quite sure what to do with his limbs or his voice. "And we're flying to Charlotte tonight? You have an interview in the morning, don't you?" she said matter-of-factly. "I won't be the reason you miss it twice." As they approached the steps, a stewardess in a sleek navy uniform greeted them at the base. "Good evening, Miss Moore. Mr. Jefferson, welcome aboard." Marcus hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, glancing up at the gleaming jet, then back at Evelyn. "Are you sure about this?" "Quite," she said, then added with a wink, "unless you'd prefer to sleep on that bench again." That broke the tension just enough. Marcus chuckled under his breath, hoisted his bag, and climbed aboard. The inside of the aircraft was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Cream leather seats with gold stitching, polished wood panels, ambient lighting that made the space feel more like a five-star hotel suite than a flying machine. There were no rows, just a lounge-like configuration with a dining area in the rear, a conference space with screens, and a kitchenette where the scent of something warm and herbed lingered in the air. Evelyn settled into one of the large swivel chairs and gestured for Marcus to do the same. He eased into the seat, still feeling like he was trespassing. The stewardess brought them both drinks. Water for him, champagne for her, and as the engines rumbled to life beneath them, Marcus glanced out the window to see the runway lights blur into golden streaks. The takeoff was smooth, near silent. In the soft hum of altitude, Evelyn turned to him. "Do you know anything about aircraft mechanics?" Marcus blinked. "Not much," he admitted. "Engines are engines, I guess, but planes, that's a different level." Evelyn smiled. "That's true, but not as different as people think. Combustion, pressure systems, diagnostics, they speak the same language. What matters is if you can listen." Marcus nodded slowly, unsure where she was going with this, but curious despite himself. "Aurora Air started as 5 leased jets and an idea," she continued, her voice calm but firm. She paused, then met his eyes. "We're not just building routes, Marcus. We're building futures. But that kind of vision needs people who understand machines and, more importantly, people." Marcus leaned forward slightly, drawn in. "What are you saying?" Evelyn studied him for a moment before speaking again. "We've developed a program, Aurora Mechanics Global. Training centers in Ghana, Colombia, Vietnam. We're starting small, 50 apprentices per site, local hires, training from scratch." He suddenly felt the duffel on the floor beside him like a tether to the life he'd thought was permanent. "You think I'm that person?" Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She sipped her drink, then looked out the window for a beat. "I think you have the tools," she said. "You just need the right garage." Then she reached into the satchel beside her and slid a folder across the table between them. "Take a look." Inside was a proposed position, Technical Director of Aurora Global Training Initiative. Marcus stared at the papers, heart thudding in his ears. "I'm supposed to start over? In Ghana?" Evelyn smiled gently. You'd be helping others start over, and you wouldn't be doing it alone. What about the job in Charlotte? He asked, the practical part of him fighting for space. You should still go, she said. Do the interview, see what they offer, then decide. But I suspect your heart's already leaning a different way. She handed him a pen, slim and weighty. You don't have to sign tonight, but if you do, we'll begin your training next week. Marcus looked down at the folder, then at the window again, where the lights below had become scattered constellations of possibility. He didn't know yet what he'd choose, but for the first time in years he realized he had a choice. The next morning, Marcus stood in the lobby of the Whitmore building in uptown Charlotte, the kind of gleaming glass tower that seemed to belong more in a finance district of New York than in the heart of the Carolinas. His shirt, pressed again with help from the hotel iron, was tucked carefully into a pair of slacks that still bore the faintest line of wear at the knees. His shoes, polished the night before with a hotel washcloth, squeaked softly against the marble floor as he shifted his weight, gripping the leather-bound folder Evelyn had given him, not with her offer, but with a set of detailed reports on Aurora's training vision, which he hadn't been able to stop rereading since their flight landed. But this morning wasn't about Evelyn. It was about the other path, the safer one. The receptionist, all red lipstick and headset, offered him a practiced smile and directed him to the 15th floor. Carolina Motors, Suite 1507. Marcus thanked her, stepping into the mirrored elevator, his own reflection looking more confident than he felt. The ride up was quiet. Too quiet. At Suite 1507, the doors opened to a minimalist office space filled with gray carpet and polite efficiency. A man in a tight-fitting suit met him with a handshake that was a little too firm and introduced himself as Brent Davis, the Director of Technical Operations. Marcus, great to have you. We've heard good things from your application. Resume's solid. Hands-on experience is exactly what we've been needing. Marcus nodded, trying not to let the word needing sound like a warning bell. Thank you for having me, he replied. The interview ran smooth. Davis asked about diagnostic experience, engine rebuilds, working with outdated systems. Marcus answered with the easy fluency of someone who'd spent 2 decades under hoods and around fumes. He mentioned his time managing apprentices at the garage, the rig he built to test alternators when they didn't have the budget for new ones, how he trained his nephew to identify valve noise by ear. Davis nodded along, took notes, and then said something that landed like a quiet thud. You'll be working under our technical supervisor, Kyle Davidson. He's new, just came from Michigan State with his master's. We think you two will complement each other nicely. Marcus didn't flinch, but the implication sank in. He'd be working beneath someone with less field experience, but more academic clout. Davis continued. Standard hours are 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Overtime optional, but often encouraged. Starting salary is $58,000, 0 cents, with review potential after 18 months, benefits package included. You'd start next Monday. Marcus nodded. May I have a day to consider the offer? Davis raised a brow, surprised. You're one of 2 candidates and the other guy's got another offer pending. I can give you 24 hours. Marcus thanked him again and left the building with the Carolina sky stretching wide above him, the sun bright but somehow distant. His phone buzzed as he stepped back onto the sidewalk. A message from Evelyn, short and simple. Dinner tonight, 7 p.m., top floor, the Wayland. That evening, Marcus found himself riding another elevator, this one to the top of a historic downtown tower. The Wayland was all dark wood and glass walls, its rooftop dining room overlooking the Charlotte skyline like a throne room in the clouds. Evelyn stood by the window when he arrived, her back straight, a tumbler of water in her hand. She wore navy again, her quiet armor, and her hair was pinned in the same elegant twist. She turned as he approached, her smile neither triumphant nor urgent, just present. You made it, she said. You look like someone with decisions to make. They sat at a table set for 2, white linen, no menus, everything already arranged. As the waitstaff moved silently around them, Evelyn folded her hands and studied him. Tell me what they offered? Marcus recounted the package without embellishment. When he finished, Evelyn nodded slowly. It's honest work, it'll keep your lights on. He looked down at his water glass. It's what I thought I wanted. 6 months ago I'd have signed on the spot. But now? She asked. He hesitated. Now it feels like a ceiling instead of a step. Evelyn leaned forward. That's because it is. But it's not a trap. It's a choice. And I won't fault you either way. The question is whether your instincts are asking for safety or meaning. She reached into her bag again and pulled out the same folder from the night before. We need someone in Accra. The facility is nearly built, the curriculum's drafted, but it needs leadership, hands that understand engines, and a voice that earns respect. The offer stands. Higher salary, housing, international benefits, and education support for your son. But more than that. It's purpose, Marcus. He swallowed. You barely know me. I know enough, she said softly. I know you chose to help when you had every reason not to. I know you gave your last dollars to feed someone else. I know you were more concerned with a stranger's health than your own future. That tells me what I need to know about your character. And character is what sustains everything else. The air between them stilled as the weight of possibility settled onto the table like a third guest. Marcus looked out the window, Charlotte twinkling below, still full of lives moving in every direction. If I take this, he said finally, I'm moving my whole life across the world. I'm taking my son to a place I've never been. I'm walking away from everything familiar. Evelyn didn't push. She only said, and walking towards something extraordinary. Marcus nodded slowly, then picked up the pen beside the folder. It felt heavier than any tool he'd ever held, but as he turned it in his fingers, he thought of the bench at the airport, the woman with trembling hands, the look on her face when he offered to carry her bags. He thought of his father, who never got the second chance he'd just been handed. Then he signed. 18 months later, the early morning sun stretched over the tarmac just outside Accra, Ghana, casting long, amber shadows across the newly painted facade of the Aurora Global Training Center. Marcus Jefferson stood on the observation deck above it all, his arms crossed lightly over a pressed navy blue uniform marked with the Aurora emblem. A small sun rising behind wings stitched just above his heart. From this perch he could see the entire compound, the classrooms lined with workbenches and diagnostic computers, the dormitories housing 30 local trainees, and the 3 aircraft parked for hands-on study. Marcus watched with quiet pride as 2 of his top apprentices worked through a checklist on a hydraulic system, their movements fluid, precise. At that moment, a sleek black SUV turned into the compound, its arrival understated but unmistakable. Marcus's chest tightened slightly. Even now, she had that effect on people. The door opened and Evelyn stepped out, wearing a light linen blazer and a pair of tortoiseshell sunglasses that she removed slowly as she took in the facility. At 73, she moved with more care but no less certainty. "Miss Moore," he said, offering his hand with a grin he couldn't suppress. "Welcome back." She took it, holding it a second longer than protocol required. "You look like you belong here," she said, eyes searching his face. "I feel like I do," Marcus replied. "Most days." They walked together into the hangar where students stood aside respectfully, some smiling, others whispering. Evelyn glanced at each of them, her gaze warm but assessing. "They know who you are," Marcus said quietly. "To them, you're not a name on the wall. You're the reason they're here." She smiled. "And to them, you're the one who showed up every morning and stayed after every night. That makes you the reason they're succeeding." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the tarmac, Evelyn prepared to depart. Her return flight to the States awaited, but before stepping into the SUV, she turned back toward Marcus. "Sao Paulo is next," she said almost casually. "We break ground in 5 months. It needs a leader." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You're offering me the next one?" "I'm offering you the choice," she said. Again, he nodded, not answering right away. Instead, he looked out across the facility where his team moved like a symphony of purpose, their steps steady, their hands sure. He thought of his son, now enrolled in a bilingual school nearby, who had already begun asking questions about airplanes and circuits. He thought of his father, whose photo now hung in his office, right above his desk, beside a framed copy of that original folded note from Evelyn. "Stay right here, I'll find you." "I'll think about it," he said, smiling. Evelyn smirked. "You always do." As she climbed into the car, she rolled down the window one last time. "And Marcus," she said, her voice low and sincere. "Thank you for carrying my bags that day." Then she was gone, her vehicle rolling back onto the open road. Marcus stood for a moment longer, letting the quiet settle before turning back toward the hangar. Behind him the plaque gleamed. Ahead of him, 30 futures waited with wrenches in hand, hungry to learn, ready to rise. Somewhere in an airport terminal, maybe that very moment, someone else might be facing a choice, to rush past or to stop and help. And maybe, just maybe, they would make the same choice he had, because sometimes what seems like a missed flight is just a different runway, and what looks like an ending is the beginning of something far greater than you ever imagined. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.